Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Srinivasan Nilamegam. I'm a developer advocate at SAP, and I will be the host for this session. We are in week 3, day 2 of Devtoberfest, and today's topic is going to be guided experience with SAP Build Process Automation and Work Zone. With me, I have our guest speakers, Shruti and Florian. Shruti is a senior product manager for SAP Build, and Florian is a product manager in SAP BTP area focusing on Build Work Zone. Before we begin our session, I want to remind our attendees to join the Devtoberfest group in the SAP community so you can be eligible for the Devtoberfest contest and a grand prize of an all expenses paid trip to a SAP TechEd Road Show stop in 2025. I would now like to invite Shruti to introduce herself and start the session.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Shruti, and I'm part of the SAP Build product family. And together with Florian, today we will be presenting the latest capabilities of guided experiences with SAP Build Process Automation and Work Zone. Florian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, maybe just a few more words. Thank you. Very happy to be here. Looking forward to an interactive session, and we have some exciting things prepared for you that have just been shipped. So look forward to the session, and over to you again, Shruti.
Absolutely. It's absolutely fresh out of the oven. So you can also see it in our LinkedIn pages that we have also published blog posts for the same. But yeah, without further ado, I would like to kickstart the session. And as we go through the session, please feel free to also post your messages in. We are here to have a very interactive session and also answer your question on the fly. All right, so the agenda for today. So I will start with the big picture of SAP Build, what SAP Build is all about, then provide you an overview of guided experiences and a snapshot of what the feature anatomy looks like. And after that, we have the very exciting demo that Florian will showcase. And together we will then also navigate through a few use cases. And finally, we will then open up the round for Q&A. Okay, so then let's get started. So as you know, SAP Build provides you the flexibility to create apps, automate processes, and design digital workspaces. It is this collaborative design that allows diverse teams to build solutions faster using pre-built solutions. And together with that, what we also emphasize on is the fusion development. So what does fusion development mean? It essentially means that we build in collaboration in mind. So SAP enables both professionals, IT experts, business users to work together for a faster and more effective solution building. And as you already know, powered by Joule, a co-pilot leveraging industry data processes knowledge and customer data to understand your business needs. So yeah, this is what we do here within SAP Build. But today we would be focusing on the low-code area, which is where we are currently building the guided processes using a Build Process Automation and Build Work Zone. And as you know, guided processes is a multi-step, multi-system problem that has been addressed. And as we know that in this multi-system setup, users may need to traverse through many disconnected systems to get work done. And this is exactly where guided experiences comes into picture. So today we will be showcasing a use case, which is one of the real-time use case that most of the employees encounter while joining any new company. And this would form the basis of our storyline today to take you through guided experiences. So essentially, guided experience is about guiding users in everyday business context to fulfill any task. For example, as I mentioned before, an employee might need to complete some essential corporate trainings, place an order for a new equipment, book their travel, etc. And this is where Work Zone and Process Automation guided experience are aimed towards providing these functional services centers to maybe HR, IT, etc., and provide a seamless experience. And Now that I've introduced guided experience to you, let me also clarify what it is not. So what is it not? So the primary purpose is not to do all the steps in one system and not to rebuild steps that you would previously do in different systems. And also, this is not to be confused with the basic trial available via sap.com guided experience or any other in-product guiding feature. So what exactly is it instead? Guided experience is really for complex, multi-system, multi-step processes. The objective here is to harmonize and unify the experience for processes and activities that involve many multiple steps, which spans across multiple systems, which could be SAP or even non-SAP. So it could be S4HANA or SuccessFactors, or it could be also some other non-SAP systems. And the idea here also is that once you configure these steps, you don't have to do it at one go. You can also have a possibility to come back to it later. And you can essentially incorporate the capabilities across Build solution for a unified offering for your customer. And now coming to the feature anatomy. So the solution anatomy for Build guided experiences consist of Build Work Zone. So with Build Work Zone, we would be essentially building the wizard layout. And this is then interlinked with Build Process Automation. So there's a tight handshake that happens between Build Process Automation. So essentially you start from Build Process Automation and start to configure or model your guided experience, which is now available within Process Automation. And once you configure all the steps, release and deploy the project, it would be available within WorkZone for your consumption. And the simplicity of it is the highlight of this entire solution, which Florian will showcase to you in a bit. And yeah, this essentially unifies the build portfolio, increases interoperability, and also provides, and you would also have a possibility to create content out of it, which you could also provide to your own customers. And with that, I would now like to hand over to Florian to kickstart the demo and show us guided experience in action. Off to you, Florian.
Thank you so much. All righty. Then allow me to overshare. You should be able to see my screen, I hope.
Yes.
Perfect. All righty. So then, building on top of what Sruthi has highlighted, I want to show you actually several demo flows and scenarios. Again, we're very happy to share that this feature just in time for this Devtoberfest has been released to all environments. So maybe just in terms of availability, some highlights or some remarks. Basically, it has been shipped to all SAP Build Process Automation environments. So you will be able to create guided processes as I will be showing it to you in just a few minutes. Also, the corresponding integration of this guided process in SAP Build Work Zone, which I again will show you, is also released. Please note that this feature is currently released under the preview release mechanism of Work Zone Advanced Edition / SuccessFactors Work Zone. So you won't find it yet in your regular Work Zone environment, but only those environments you flagged for the preview release, where basically selected capabilities become available roughly a month ahead before then making their way to the non-preview environment. So just in case, if you're wondering where can I find this capability, make sure that you're checking in an environment where, the preview mechanism is enabled and you have checked all the necessary prerequisites in terms of required destinations, permissions, and other aspects, which we cover both in our blog as well as in our central head guide. So just that out of the way in terms of availability and getting your own hands onto the capabilities I'm about to show. Now, to set the stage a bit, where have we come from and what were the capabilities you may have seen so far? And that is the wizard layout, which as Shruti highlighted in the anatomy, is sort of the user interface experience where users will then actually interact with the guided experience. So this is what I'll start with before or then afterwards moving into modeling a more complex process, making that available in Work Zone as the basis for another guided experience. So I'll will show you two main demo flows here. To start things off, again, the capability of the so-called wizard layout. This is something you will find available in, again, Advanced Edition and SuccessFactors Work Zone on any work page that exists in your system. And this is basically also the same in both standalone and integrated experiences. You'll be able to add a new section in a work page, and you will note that also as of this release, the overall work page editor has been further enhanced. So there's some tweaks and enhancements in different areas there. So that's why it also looks maybe different to what you have seen prior to this release. And what you can do for each of the sections, you have a choice, if it's a full width section, to actually, instead of a widget, add from the widget catalog, add a dedicated wizard. And this is essentially the dialog that pops up. This is pretty much what we had already with the previous release. The key change, and I'll focus more on this in just a bit, is this ability to select the process as the foundation. Now, what you can do in any case is you can still create a wizard without a process connected to it. So just like before, if you have a more lightweight procedure or something where there's not so much advanced logic, conditions, etc., in between the different steps necessary, you can still create a wizard like you would or would have done before. And this is what I quickly show you just to lay the foundation in terms of the designing, because that is common. And so that's something you can still do. And we will, of course, continue to support that approach. But again, what is new is really this whole integration with process automation. Again, more to that in just a few minutes. Now, when you made your choice to say, okay, I want to add such a wizard here, please note that it always will consume basically the full width of a section. You can then go ahead and, as I said, as I've done here, basically create a structure for the users to go through. The general structuring elements that we use are stages, which is basically the first level, and then one or multiple steps within each stage. They will basically then form the structure of the actual process or the experience, the guided experience that the user goes through. As you can see here in this demo example, this is now something around onboarding, actually starting from before the user joins the company. So you can see here, there's before your first day, and then first day, and potentially first 90 days. But you can see that the structure is quite flexible. You can have more or fewer stages, fewer steps in each of them. And in general, can come up with a structure that really takes the user, hence the name, by the hand and guides them through the experience, overcoming that rather challenging disconnected experience that Shruti highlighted in the introduction of our session. So let's say I'm happy with the section or with the structure here. I can, of course, easily add more if I wish to. And the key element that now comes to the table is, of course, filling each of those steps with life in the sense of actually adding content to it. And what you'll see is that this will be very similar or quite familiar to the overall work page editing experience. So if I show you that first, you kind of see the connection point very easily. As you can see here, we have this add widget dialog anywhere on the work page and any structure. And what that gives you access to is basically, depending a bit on the context, in a workspace is a little different than in a menu, but bottom line, you have always a collection of different cards and widgets available. And from this catalog of different UI elements that you can work with, you can basically pick and choose quite freely. And in the case of cards, there's actually a lot of ability for out-of-the-box or custom cards to be added even. And you can add these individual UI elements to any part of the work page. And when editing a wizard, it really doesn't behave any differently, because as you will be able to see here, if I go to any of the steps here, see, it doesn't really matter. I can always go there, and in each of those steps, basically I can go ahead and go into the edit mode and essentially add a widget. You can see it's the same dialog. So in terms of the design ability, there's quite a high degree of flexibility from adding different rather static content elements from rich text, multimedia, videos, images. So it's more content driven to other artifacts that relate more to business transactions or business information. You can have different tiles, applications as a mashup. You can add UI cards that surface information such as training, forms, other information from the user's profile, required other compliance material. So you can see really quite a flexible mix of content in different flavors and formats, just like you can do it with any other work page, and you can make that available on each of the wizard steps. Now, if I'm happy with this design, again, I could rearrange this a bit if I wish to, but for the sake of this quick first demo here, let's say I'm happy with the way the wizard looks and feels. I can simply go ahead and publish. And then when I publish the wizard layout, or more specifically, if I publish the work page on which I've placed this wizard layout, every user that I've granted access to this work page will basically be able to access the wizard or the guided experience, to be more precise. And you can basically see I've now created this in my own workspace here, so I will be the only user that can see it. But before I go into the user view here, just to show you a different example or a different view on this, imagine you have a central workspace for everything around parental leave that walks the user through all these different steps. You can see here, there's a knowledge base, there's maybe a forum, policies. You can see here lots of different information. And then the guided experience becomes one of the content artifacts, or one of the elements that the user goes through or explores in going through this parental leave workspace, which serves as their one-stop shop experience for, in this case, parental leave. It can be any other process, HR or otherwise. And that's where sort of guided experience then come to the mix. And again, per my point, the permissions or the access to the guided experience itself is completely determined by the work page itself. So if the user is given access to a given work page, then they can also access and start the guided experience on their own. Which there's also some implicit permission model, which is derived from the workspace. So if the workspace, for instance, is considered restricted in access, so it's a private workspace as we call it, so only selected users have access to that, then of course also only those users who have been granted access to the workspace and the corresponding work pages within it will be able to actually work with the respective guided experience, just like it is true for any other piece of content that is on the work page or in the workspace itself, in a nutshell. Now, for the sake of this quick demo, I'll move back to my quick first demo example here. So now as a user, I've modeled this guided experience. And as Shruti also highlighted, now this is sort of a collaboration model of potentially different team members, right? This may be a collaboration of certain designer or design experts, more process experts in the context of onboarding. This would be potentially experts from HR, knowing which steps are necessary, what content should be shown, what steps are necessary for the user, so that you have different technical and business experts working together to create such a guided experience. Ultimately, it is then rolled out to the business user. And then as a business user, will basically be able to go ahead and if I'm presented with this wizard, so let's say I'm switching hats now for the sake of this demo here. So I'm no longer the administrator that has designed this, but maybe I'm now an end user consuming this. I will be able to explore this wizard or this guided experience step by step. And as you can see, basically, depending on what content I've presented here on the screen, the user will basically be able to explore and go through it step by step. And I can also configure whether or not certain steps are mandatory or optional, as you can also see highlighted here with this little gray text. And depending on that, certain actions may be necessary by the user or can also be skipped if desired. Now, the key aspect to consider here is that, of course, if you want to enforce certain actions by the user, for instance, here, the equipment topic. So for instance, you can say here the user should select their IT equipment, their preferred IT equipment in the context of this onboarding process, and you want that the user takes this action. You can actually work with the UI card framework, which you added to this page, to have this card interact with the wizard to enforce certain actions to be taken. So this is something we have also released, not exactly with this release, but a little ahead of that, where you can basically model UI cards in a way that they interact with the wizard layout and ensure that, for instance, in this case, the user has selected at least one equipment because this step is marked as mandatory in the wizard structure, and only then I will be able to advance. If I don't do this, the wizard will basically throw a warning. little plug here. There's also a public GitHub repo that basically explains this in a lot more detail, and it has actually code examples for these cards that I'm showing. So in case you want to learn more about that, that would be a good resource also to go to, which is also pointed to from our guide. And assuming I'm happy with this layout, and again, I'm a user now that is going through this, I can basically proceed with the wizard. And now, as Sruthi also highlighted, onboarding is an activity that will not take basically one day and then I'm done. In this example, the wizard is structured to actually run for a longer period of time. And what I want to avoid as a user is I want to avoid having to remember where I left off and basically then having to go through a long list and, okay, did I now leave at step 10 or 15? That's exactly why the wizard, in both scenarios, standalone as well as integrated with process automation, will remember where I've left off. So if I basically, close, and you can see here, I have now actually completed a few steps there, and then it will allow me to continue. What you can see here is that there's not really any mechanism to, for instance, have a condition where the user, if I go back to the structure here for a second, what I cannot really achieve in this lightweight work zone wizard layout only integrations, I cannot really achieve a way where the user says, okay, I should be able to go through the first day activity or before your first day, but until I've reached my hire date, I cannot really go further. So you can basically check certain activities in a given step, but you cannot really have a more complex structure, logic, conditions in between those different aspects. Fetching additional information via different processes. So that's not really something you can achieve with the standalone wizard layout. And the good news is that that's not a problem at all. In fact, we have a solution for that. And this is sort of the second part of my demo, which is if you want to account for these more complex conditions, modeling of maybe more complex processes, additional scenarios, or you basically want to ensure a more consistent, fixed structure of the process, because you can see here, this is all basically manually typed, not really predetermined based on a predefined content. If you want to achieve those and other goals, we basically now have this new capability, which I will shift to now. This is what we have now released as of effectively end of last week, earlier this week. And that capability is actually twofold. It is on the one hand side, and of course I've timed out, so let's first log in again. So the first thing that you will notice, and I'll go here in my demo flow for a second. The first big change, or the big new addition to the SAP Build Process Automation product is a completely new artifact that we call guided process. So what you'll see once the studio comes up here, you'll be able to see that I can actually create a new artifact, and that is something we call guided process. In creating such a guided process, I think I have a quick example show coming up here, so I can show you that a little more lightweight first. So what you can see is you can model such a guided process, and what this guided process resembles, and I think you can start to see the pattern, hopefully, is it resembles that same structure of stages and steps. And what you can see is I can basically start creating and modeling such a process, which I would have previously just created as a list of stages and steps in the wizard layout. I can now model this a lot more granularly and more in a more advanced fashion. You can see here I can model different steps. I can have different branches, different activities running in parallel or sequential to another. You can see here I've created a stage. You can see here I have the option to create a new stage, or also call other aspects like creating a branch, triggering a sub-process. So more process automation capabilities are available here. And so I can basically start modeling this process as I would like to have the guided experience look like step for step for the user. So this is out of the new additional mechanism of how you can create such a guided experience, which is you go ahead into process automation and model such a guided process as a first step. Now, you can see here, I have different options available. Again, I've started with the ability to create a stage. In each stage, just like I've shown you in the wizard layer, but again, here, more flexible in terms of parallel versus and/or sequential, you go ahead and create the the actual steps. In this case here, welcome on board, select your equipment, other steps. And just to show you, what you can do is you can basically then also say, okay, this is the next step. Please note that as of this moment or as of now, the only step type or step UI, as we call it, you can actually select is work zone. What does that mean? That means that each of the steps or the UI for each of the steps you determine here is actually then defined in work zone itself. It'll make more sense in just a second when I consume this process in work zone, but what you want to remember for now is basically you come up with the process structure, and then you say, okay, step, in this case, the required training step as an example, that step is also symbolized by the little W, that is then designed in work zone itself. Looking ahead, now there's a bit of a roadmap disclaimer. What we obviously plan or want to offer are then additional step UIs. Think of a form or something where you don't have to redesign the form in work zone if the form is already modeled here, for example, and then a new step UI would become available. As of now, basically the wizard is the mechanism to define the entire UI of the guided experience. Process automation provides, if you so will, the backbone, the process skeleton behind the scenes. Again, more to that in just a second when I actually consume this process. So what you can see, I have different options available from sub-process calling, branching out, creating certain conditions. And if I now go back to my hire date example here from before, I think I can go here. You can see how I'm actually given a little more flexibility, actually a lot more flexibility in achieving exactly my goal, which is I want to determine the hire date of the user, which is now here achieved via this sub-process that is fetching, for instance, the hire date information from success vectors or other mechanisms of however I get the hire date of the user. And this hire date, or more precisely, the output of that or the result of this retrieval is then later on used as a condition, as you can see here, to actually continue the process. You can see here there's an event. I'll zoom in a bit. I hope it's a little better to read then. You can see here there's basically a wait configured so that it's now waiting for the hire date to be reached, which ensures that until that hire date is reached, the user is not going to be able, and I'll zoom out a bit here again, to proceed with day one and also day one onwards, so the first 3 month steps, which is exactly the goal I wanted to achieve earlier, which is, well, the hire date should be checked, and only if my hire date is reached, then I should be able to proceed with day one and onward, because obviously these activities are meant for my first day and onwards. And if I'm given access to the guided experience ahead of that, for instance, to get some initial, get myself familiarized with the office location of an organization or other activities, it's great that I can complete certain activities, but I should not be able to start or access others. So it's really that additional flexibility that is now added. Now, as I want to highlight here, this is not just modeled separately and then you're kind of stuck in process automation. This is a deep integrated experience across process automation and work zone. So what happens as the next step, which is you basically go ahead and, as you typically do in process automation, you basically move from the editable state. Eventually, you deploy it into the system. And again, here I can show an already deployed example, which looks pretty much the same as the demo flow I've started with. And what happens if you deploy from here, it actually deploys the guided process and the corresponding artifacts behind the scenes into work zone itself. So the connected work zone environment that is available in that same sub account is then also receiving all the details around this deployed process. This is quite crucial, something you don't have to worry about. This is an integration built by SAP behind the scenes. There's a pre-built connection basically that takes care of deploying the process directly into work zone. Now, that's already a good start, but the process itself, of course, you have to do something with it. And before I show you how this process can be consumed in work zone, a little side note here in terms of the overall structure. Please note that the guided process capability is only available in the environments concept of build, or specifically shared environment, so not the default public environment. And you'll see this if you try to deploy a guided or a project with a guided process in it, you won't be able to deploy this unless it's in basically a dedicated shared environment. And And as another side note, in order to actually consume any of those processes, or guided processes, as I will show you in just a second, you will also then need certain permissions. Again, details are in the help guide and on our blog. You will need certain permissions in the environment itself. You'll need the process participant role and some other aspects so that you can actually consume the process. So just take that into account. Some other artifacts you can, of course, work with in the public environment, but this is a newer one, which only will work in this new environments concept, for which there's also a separate blog announcing this in a little more detail. Now, to close this demo story or close the demo loop here, let's say I've now deployed the guided process as I've shown you from process automation into Work Zone. And what I want to do now is I want to create a guided experience following that process. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to go ahead and now manually retype all the steps, and again, don't have access to the advanced logic and condition checking whether the higher date is reached. So I want to really now leverage exactly this entire process that I've just created and deployed. And that's the other side of that coin, of that integration that we have now released, which is the integration with a process as a template for guided experience or for a wizard layout. So just like in my demo before, I can go ahead and create a wizard layout. And what I did previously, I basically went ahead and selected the standalone option. But what I want to do now, I don't want to select this new wizard option, but I will do instead is I will basically select the process I've deployed and previously modeled in process automation. And what you'll now see is basically that it will pre-populate the entire wizard layout, meaning the entire structure, whether or not certain steps are mandatory or not. It will basically pre-populate this automatically. Again, thanks to that pre-built integration behind the scenes. And what I can now start to do, and again, for the sake of this demo, I'll keep this part rather short. You can start modeling the content just like you would do in basically any other guided experience or wizard layout. In this case here, I'm going to add a quick text here. I'm just going to copy that from here. You can see you can add some text, some compliance forms. You can add any design, whatever you want, really. Again, the mechanism and the capabilities are basically the same as in terms of the designing of guided experiences that you have seen in my previous demo. So no need to repeat all of that, just to get some content in here, have some text, some videos. Again, you can add cards, other aspects as you see fit. And that didn't take a lot of time because the process and the entire structure was already defined. So the only thing left for me to do is basically now say, okay, I'm happy with this wizard structure and the design, so I can publish and make this available to my users. And now the last part of that demo is basically me starting. Now, basically, I'm one of the users that is receiving this guided experience in this employee experience workspace. And what I can now do is I can basically now go ahead and say, I want to start this guided experience. Now, unlike the wizard layout itself, which is without the integration to process automation, what this integration now with process automation, with the guided process will do is they will actually trigger a process instance creation. So this will now, behind the scenes, thanks to this pre-built integration, trigger or create a dedicated instance of this guided process for my user, which will also store the progress it's directly linked to my user ID, to this wizard layout, etc., to all these different artifacts. And so again, this is a bi-directional, deep pre-built integration. You don't have to worry about any of that. So this is all taken care of by the SAP integration. I can go through this wizard like I would have done with any other wizard. So I'm basically able to do exactly that, go through this guided experience step for step. And just like with the other wizard that I've shown, it stores my progress, as I've just said, and I'm able to basically continue from wherever I left off if I come back the next hour, the next day, whatever it might be. And with this, I hope this gave you a pretty good insight into what or where have we come from in terms of the wizard layout, and what have we now added with the guided process modeling and process automation, the ability to deploy that, making that available in Work Zone all the way, and making this then the template, or using this as a template for the guided experience wizard in Work Zone. So I think we can pause if there's any immediate questions to this. Otherwise, we can sort of circle back to some use case discussions in a minute. But I'll pause if there's any questions in the chat for now. not sure if there were questions raised in the live stream. I've not seen that yet, but
I have a question, Florian.
sure.
So the work zone part, the features that you showed in work zone, they are available in the advanced edition, right? The process automation part, that also will be available only in the paid version. Is that correct?
So to unpack this a bit, in order to model the guided process, so basically the capability that I've shown here, this will require the advanced user license type.
Okay.
Just to answer that part. So in order to be able to model this here, and that's true in general to gain access to the SAP Build lobby, to create projects and other stuff, you'll need, in the case of process automation, the advanced user. In order to consume the process, you will need at least a process participant, so the standard user, or the standard user to be precise, license type wise. In the context of SuccessFactors Work Zone, for instance, we have a commercial bundle where you basically get the same number of standard users of process automation as you anyway have with SuccessFactors Work Zone, and you additionally get 2 advanced users included in the subscription, which means that you can actually already nominate users to model these guided processes via the lobby, deploy them, and then all users in your organization will be able to consume them as wizard layout templates. But yes, you have to have the license for both Advanced Edition or SuccessFactors Work Zone and process automation, respectively.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm not sure whether there are other questions on the YouTube chat. Otherwise, we can circle back to the use case discussion.
Yeah, I think we can go to the use cases discussion.
Alrighty, we'll do that. I will overshare then. Okay. So to recap a bit, we've now seen technically 2 demo flows pointing to the use case that we work with a lot, that is onboarding, and basically both a lightweight version as well as an integrated SAP Build Process Automation integrated one. So this is one thing that we wanted to show you. Nonetheless, we do see, based on different conversations, we do see a lot of potential and exciting use cases in really across an organization, across the enterprise, where guided experiences can play a role. What we would like to invite, and maybe this is also some food for thought, again, we have a blog post shared, so if some things come to mind a little later, feel free to also then share them with us. Our contact details, I think, will be also then shown at the end, so feel free to contact us. We are going to show some use case ideas that we have in mind, but we would really also love to hear from the community what use cases you can think of now that you've seen this integrated capability becoming available or being available across the landscapes. So to help basically kickstart this discussion a bit, or give you some creative thoughts, hopefully, in general, the way we see this is really that it is a capability across SAP Build that can cover really across, or can serve use cases or provide benefits across an organization, across the enterprise. Again, be it in HR scenarios, in more supply chain or spend management related scenarios, certainly a lot of elements or scenarios that we see in the context of customer experience or CRM, be it sales, service, marketing. So really across different parts of an organization, from communication, IT, services, really a broader spectrum of teams that we see can benefit from this. And we also want to sort of hint towards the fact that we've now shown a demo that focuses on employees, but really Work Zone and process automation in general, and also this guided experience capability in particular, we do see a lot of opportunities to use this across a broader spectrum of personas. Well, employees are sort of an obvious or more obvious scenario, but also interacting with partners or even customers. So in general, external participants, non-employees, we also see a lot of opportunities in utilizing such a capability for those personas. And if we look drill a little more closely in those different buckets, we actually do see different exciting use cases from different aspects around guiding the user. Onboarding we've talked about, but think of related scenarios, changing departments within an organization, or also leaving an organization. Offboarding is a quite important scenario where a lot of different activities across systems need to be completed. So there's a lot of opportunities there. In the context of IT, we also see exciting scenarios, be it around procurement or procuring different scenarios, interacting with an ecosystem. Complementing IT ticket handling, and certainly scenarios around more complex processes inside an organization for which maybe there doesn't exist any dedicated application yet. This can then be used to create exactly that. For instance, you have a process around requesting in-house mail shipment, and this is currently not existing as an interface for the user. So this can be a great experience to create and design such a process where the user can then trigger the process, can maybe also evolve a process, approval steps, etc. So it can be more or less complex, where that's more of an IT aspect. And then maybe last but not least, sort of more of a cross-organizational scenario, maybe somewhat linked to customer experience. When planning events or planning a trip, if you have a larger event to organize, different aspects around checklists, coming to decision points of event locations, activities to account for. So basically different elements in organizing and planning larger trips or events that again need to be followed in a sort of structured step-by-step manner. Again, here, guided experience, we do think has a lot of opportunities and potential to provide value. With this, I hope this gave some good insights or some ideas in terms of use cases. I'm not sure if there are some additional thoughts from the audience in the chat. We would love to hear those. Otherwise, again, also towards the end, our contact details will be there. So please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to hear from your use cases and collaborate with you, making examples available, blog posts, example content in the library, etc. So I'll pause again if there's any feedback from the community on this part.
There are no questions on this part.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
And we've essentially come to the end of our content. So assuming there are no questions on the use case part, just to formally open up in case there are other questions, commercials, technical, architecture, features, anything, we're more than happy to address them. I think, as you can see, we still have sufficient time for more Q&A. So if there's questions, now is the time. So I'll pause again if there's any other opportunity for questions from anyone in the audience.
Florian, so there are a few questions that are popping up in YouTube. Sure. So I've tried to answer most, but there are, maybe we can take this recent ones online. So is the functionality of guided experience available in BTP trial?
Yeah, great question. So unfortunately, the advanced edition is not available via the trial landscape. So we do offer basically what is called a basic trial of advanced edition, where you can get familiarize yourself with the product itself. But in order to get the full advanced edition capability, this is not available via trial, unfortunately. So it's only available via the regular enterprise accounts, essentially. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there is another question on standard and advanced users. So how do we typically differentiate between these two users? Is it with respect to the roles that are assigned to the user, or via the role collection?
Yes, basically the role and the role collections are basically what determine the permissions that the user actually has, and this is what then determines the consumption of the respective licenses that you get. Again, there's different types of licenses. The most notable ones are probably the standard and advanced user in process automation. Again, the decision factor here should be who should have the permission to work in the build lobby and model content and create projects. And actually here, the good thing is, especially with the environments concept, It's a lot more structured and a lot easier to govern nowadays compared to the public environment where basically all projects were sort of commingled with another. Now you have a lot stricter permission handling in place where you can grant access to only certain environments to certain users. Think of, coming back to my demo example, think of different regional teams owning their respective regional process that they want to model and deploy. And so you can give them their own environments and they can start modeling their own guided processes in their own projects and deploy accordingly. And then also only those members who they decide to grant access to the environment will then be able to consume these guided processes when creating a wizard layout in Work Zone. So there's really a high level of permission granularity and governance in SAP Build holistically, thanks to concepts like the environments. And in general, of course, to be considered who should be given which permission and consequently accounted for in the license consumption. Yeah.
Then there is one last unanswered question. They're not able to see the guided experience within their business, within SBPA or process automation, guided experience artifact.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so that would essentially be only possible for the users who've been typically using advanced version of Work Zone previously, right?
So I think that there's two possible answers to this question, depending on a bit how it's meant. So and maybe whoever posted it can then comment if that clarifies the question. So option number one, this is about the wizard consumption, not showing the guided processes, which essentially would mean that you have not fulfilled one or multiple of those prerequisites. So you don't have a guided process deployed to a shared environment, or the user you're working with in Work Zone doesn't have the necessary permission, or the required destinations to actually enable this integration between Work Zone and process automation are not configured properly with the necessary permissions. So these are the typical things that come to mind from what I've seen in validation so far. So that would be option one. That is, you have done all the deployment in process automation, but it's not showing up in Work Zone. So you basically still only see the standalone wizard option. So that's scenario number one. Scenario number two is you don't actually see the guided process artifact in the first place. That I think we would need to double check if that's really the case. Probably good then to raise a support ticket if that's really the case. Just to avoid terminology confusion, the process or the artifact in process automation you will not find under guided experience. You will find it under guided process. So that's what you want to look for in your project. It has basically the same icon as a regular process. So that's what you want to look for. If you don't see that, I think it would be good you can maybe reach out to us offline or raise a ticket if you don't see it at all, is that it should be there and it is released across the landscapes. Maybe it's a good time to actually raise our contact details in case you want to contact us actually.
Yep. And one last question, is the Work Zone sandbox still available? So they used it a month back sometime, and is it possible to extend it after 30 days?
Depends a bit on what you refer to with sandbox. Was that maybe given to you in context of one of the workshops? I think maybe best to reach out to us to avoid confusion what this may be referring to. So feel free to contact us, and then we can double check what exactly you have access to and whether it can be extended or not. Any other questions? I think you mentioned that was the last one, right?
Yes. Okay, there's another one. You call the same as guided process in SBP and guided experience in Work Zone Advanced Edition. Please confirm. So guided experience is the name of the entire project in totality. How you can configure is that you need to start configuring guided processes in SBPA and then consume it in Work Zone. So the entire process of this consumption is called as guided experience. What you will see within SBPA is guided process, from where you can start modeling of the entire experience.
All righty.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Shruti and Florian, for doing this session. I'm looking forward to try my hands-on the new capabilities that you introduced to us today. For the participants to earn points for this session, There will be a validation tutorial that will be available at the end of the day. And then there will be 2 more sessions on the topic of tooling later today to watch out. I wish you all a great day ahead and see you in the next session. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.